Heat of Nevada, a dark introduction. The heat in Nevada isn't just weather, it's something alive. It claws at your throat, and settles deep inside your lungs, like powdered glass. Samuel Thorne knew this heat well. But the air around Blackwood Manor was different. It didn't shimmer with the golden waves of the desert. No, here, the air was gray, stagnant, heavy, and it carried a strange smell, ozone, and wet copper. The architect of despair at the edge of a collapsed silver mine stood the manor. A jagged tooth of Victorian architecture, biting into a cloudless sky. It was built in 1892 by Silas Blackwood, a man who, according to old records, traded his sanity for a silver vein that supposedly bled real blood. Silas Blackwood didn't build a home. He built a trap. Samuel, a disgraced historian searching for a story that could restore his reputation, pushed open the iron gates. They didn't screech. They sighed. A long, tired sound of metal finally giving up. The first 1,000 steps inside, the foyer looked like a cathedral of decay. Above him hung a massive chandelier made of raw desert crystals. They vibrated gently, humming with a deep, unsettling tone. The floor beneath his boots was black marble, streaked with dark red veins, like a map of a human circulatory system. And the portraits, every ancestor of the Blackwood family stared from the walls. But their eyes were gone. Gouged out from the canvas, replaced by small pieces of polished obsidian. As Samuel walked deeper into the manor, something felt wrong. The geometry of the house began to fail. A hallway that looked only 20 feet long took him nearly 5 minutes to cross. The windows showed the endless Nevada desert. But the sun never moved. It stayed frozen on the horizon. A bleeding orange eye that refused to set. The Library of Lost Tongues on the 3rd floor. Samuel found the library. But the books weren't made of paper. Their pages were thin sheets of beaten lead, each one engraved with a language so strange, that simply looking at it made Samuel's teeth ache. On the main desk, a sentence had been carved deep into the wood: to enter is to be counted. To stay, is to be consumed. The desert remembers what the rain forgets. Samuel read the words aloud. And the house breathed. Not metaphorically. The walls physically expanded, then contracted. Dust drifted down from the ceiling like gray snow. Then something happened. In the corner of the library stood an old slot machine from the 1920s. Without warning, it started spinning. But the symbols weren't cherries, or bells, they were human organs. Heart, lung, eye. The shadow in the corner. Samuel slowly turned his flashlight toward the sound. And in the beam of light, he saw a figure. Tall, thin, wearing a tuxedo that looked like it had been woven from moth wings. The man was translucent. Inside his body, moved shifting desert sand. The figure tilted its head. Then whispered, "The house is hungry, Mr. Thorne." The voice sounded like sandpaper scraping across bone. And it hasn't had a historian, in a very, very long time. Behind Samuel, the doors slammed shut. The locks didn't just turn. They fused into the wood. The temperature dropped to freezing. And the floor began to tilt, slowly dragging him deeper into the manor. Down, toward the silver mine waiting underneath. Like an open mouth. Choice in the dark. Then the butler returned. The tuxedo man. The shape made of writhing moths stood silently in the tunnel. In his hands he carried a polished silver tray. Resting on it were 2 objects. A rusted scalpel. And a pocket watch. The watch was ticking backward. The butler inclined his head slightly. "The master is tired, Mr. Thorne." His voice was soft, dry, almost polite. "The mountain requires a new architect." He took 1 step closer. "Someone who understands history." Another step. "Someone who can record the eternity of our hunger." Samuel felt a violent pull in his mind. An overwhelming urge to take the scalpel. Suddenly his thoughts fractured. Visions flooded his head, centuries of Nevada's past unfolding in blinding flashes. Wildfires devouring forests, drought cracking the earth, and beneath it all, the slow, agonizing growth of the silver heart buried deep inside the mountain. Samuel staggered. He understood now. He was no longer just a photographer. He was becoming something else. Something written directly into the mountain's design. Into its. The air inside the bleeding vein no longer trembled. It screamed. A shrill, impossible frequency tore through the cavern, a sound like tectonic plates grinding directly against human bone. Samuel Thorne felt the vibration deep inside his skull. His teeth loosened painfully in their sockets, and his vision fractured into a violent kaleidoscope of gray and crimson. The mountain was awake. And it was furious. The butcher's choice. The tuxedo man stepped forward slowly, the silver tray trembling in his skeletal hands. The cloud of moths forming his body fluttered and shifted like a living shadow. "Accept the silver, Samuel," he whispered. His voice echoed through the cavern like wind through a crypt. "The desert is hungry. And you were its chosen tongue." Samuel stared at the rusted scalpel resting on the tray. For a moment, his hand moved toward it. Then he stopped. Instead, his eyes locked onto something sitting on a nearby shelf, an old miner's lantern, its glass cracked, its reservoir filled with thick, ancient kerosene. Samuel grabbed it. With a roar of raw, desperate defiance, he hurled the lantern directly at the pulsating silver mass embedded in the rock, the living nerve of the mountain. The burning of the silver heart. The explosion made no sound. Blue-white fire erupted across the cavern walls, spreading instantly across the fleshy silver surface. But the flames did not behave like ordinary fire. They did not burn wood. They consumed the living silver itself. The cavern transformed into a boiling chamber of supernatural heat and steam as the metallic tissue shriveled and collapsed beneath the flames. Above him, Blackwood Manor began to groan. The sound rolled through the tunnels like a choir of dying wails. The house was collapsing. The ascent through hell. Samuel ran. The staircase leading upward had changed. The wooden steps were gone. The passage beneath his feet had become soft, elastic, like running across the inside of a giant throat. The house was alive, and it was trying to swallow him. The living hallway. Samuel burst into the hallway above. The walls rippled like liquid plaster. The faceless portraits hanging along the corridor stretched outward, their empty frames vomiting clouds of dust and static. Shapes inside the paintings reached toward him, hands forming from drifting ash. The house was trying to pull him back inside. The mutation. Halfway down the hallway, a wave of agony struck his chest. Samuel collapsed against the wall. His skin wasn't just turning gray anymore. It was hardening. His fingernails cracked and fell away, replaced by jagged shards of silver ore pushing through the skin. Every breath felt like inhaling molten lead. The mountain had already begun changing him. But he forced himself forward. The collapsed Samuel burst through the front doors of the mansion and staggered out into the cold desert night. Behind him, the entire Miller estate began to fold inward. The structure twisted and shrank, collapsing into itself like a dying star. The desert floor split open with a thunderous crack. A massive fissure tore across the earth, swallowing the Victorian nightmare whole. Within seconds, the mansion, the mine, and the screaming silver heart beneath them vanished into darkness. The desert sealed itself again. As if nothing had ever been there. The clean escape. Samuel reached his truck with shaking hands. His lungs burned. His mind was filled with echoes, screams, static, and the distant beating of something enormous beneath the earth. He drove. Miles passed in silence. He didn't dare look in the rearview mirror until the neon glow of Reno appeared on the horizon. The diner. Samuel stumbled into a crowded roadside diner. The warm light inside felt unreal after the nightmare he had escaped. Conversation stopped as he walked in. His clothes were torn, his skin pale and cracked. He looked like a ghost that